I never imagined I'd end up in a situation like this, honestly. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 7 years now. We met in college, got married shortly after, and for the most part, things seemed fine, normal, even good. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always felt secure and loved. She was assertive, confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but I liked that about her. She knew what she wanted and she wasn't afraid to push for it. But lately something's been off. Small things at first, her phone ringing at odd hours, her being more aloof, secretive about her phone, which she used to be so open about. She'd brush it off when I asked, say I was paranoid or jealous. She'd laugh, say, "You're just insecure, Mike," and I'd shrug it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Still, I noticed she was acting strange, more distant, less affectionate, and I kept telling myself it was just work stress or some random phase. We had fights before, but this felt different, like she was hiding something. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I started noticing more concrete things. Her phone kept ringing late at night, and she'd hide it fast when I'd walk into the room. I caught her deleting messages once, and I swear my stomach sank. I didn't find anything specific, but I knew there was something going on. I wasn't stupid. I'd seen enough to know she was hiding something, and I was starting to think maybe she was cheating on me. The worst part was, I didn't have proof yet, just gut feelings and vague suspicions. Still, I felt a gnawing suspicion that everything I thought we had was unraveling. Then last weekend, she went away for a girls' trip with her friends. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I decided to check her phone. I know, that's invasive, but I couldn't help it. I was desperate for answers. I waited until she was out, got her phone, and went through her texts. That's when I saw it. A string of messages with some guy named Jake, flirty, suggestive, talking about how they'd finally get some privacy at the summer house last month. My stomach clenched. The messages were from a month ago, right around when she said she was at that stupid trip with her friends. But the receipts told a different story. I found hotel receipts in her email, confirmations for a place down by the lake, just a few miles from our summer house. She booked it under her sister's name, but I knew it was her. No way those dates matched her girls' trip. And then I saw the texts, tasteless, explicit, talking about how they finally get to fuck in our bed and how much she'd missed Jake's cock. I felt like my world was crashing down around me. Everything I'd believed in, everything I thought we had, gone. She swore she was faithful, that I was the only one she ever loved, but that was all lies. That bitch lied to my face, lied to my family, to everyone, and I didn't even suspect a thing until I saw the proof with my own eyes. That night I couldn't sleep. I was sick, angry, heartbroken, and honestly, feeling betrayed on every level. I was staring at her phone, the receipts, the texts, knowing that she'd been lying for weeks, maybe even months. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for being so blind. How could she do this? How could she sit there, act like everything was fine, and then go behind my back? I kept asking myself, how much more did I not see? How many nights did she spend with Jake, pretending to be with me? It was like a punch to the gut, knowing the woman I loved had been cheating, lying through her teeth, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. The next day was pure hell. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and I kept replaying everything I'd seen. The hotel receipts, the texts, how she described their secret plans, how she said she couldn't wait to fuck him in our bed. Every word felt like a punch in the stomach. I kept thinking about how she acted the night before she left, so normal, so sweet, like nothing had happened. That bitch had the nerve to look me in the eye and lie straight to my face. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't know how or when. Part of me just wanted to explode, to scream and throw things. The other part was too hurt and betrayed to even speak. I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, staring at her phone where I'd found all that evidence, feeling like I was carrying a dead weight in my chest. I kept asking myself, should I just leave? Should I confront her right now? Or should I wait and catch her in the act? Finally, I decided I couldn't keep quiet. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I waited until she got home that evening. When she walked in, she looked exhausted, but she still had that bitchy smirk on her face, like she thought everything was still under control. I felt my fists clench. I looked her in the eye and said, "Lisa, we need to talk." Her face froze for a split second, then she gave me her usual defiant look, like she knew she could talk her way out of anything. I pulled out her phone and showed her the messages, the receipts, everything. Her face turned pale, then red with anger. What the hell is this, Lisa? Tell me the truth. Were you fucking Jake last month? Were you lying to my face this entire time? I didn't scream, but my voice was tight, angry. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. Oh, please, Mike, you're overreacting. Those are just texts and you're making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing, nothing. I couldn't believe she had the gall to deny it, to brush it off like it was some petty misunderstanding. I felt my blood boil. Nothing? You think this is nothing? You admitted to the affair. The hotel receipts, the texts, everything. How many times did you lie to me? How many nights did you see Jake behind my back? She shrugged, her bitchy attitude coming out stronger. Honestly, Mike, you're so damn insecure. I needed someone who actually pays attention to me, who can keep up. Jake's just a guy I met because I was lonely, and yeah, we had sex a couple of times. Big deal. I don't see why you're acting like this is the end of the world. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was so dismissive, so callous. She had the nerve to call me insecure after what she'd done. I felt the rage building up and I was close to losing it. But I held back because I knew I had to keep my composure. I told her, "You're disgusting. Do you even realize how much you've hurt me? I trusted you, I thought we had something real, and you just threw it away for some stupid affair with Jake. How many times did you do this? How many nights did you spend with him while pretending to be my wife?" Her eyes flashed with contempt. "Look, Mike, I don't owe you an explanation. I was bored, I needed excitement. Jake's not special. You're just too stupid to see what's right in front of you. Whatever, I don't care if you're hurt. I don't love you anymore and I don't care about your feelings." That's when I realized it wasn't about just the cheating anymore. It was about her complete lack of remorse, her arrogance, her sense that she could do whatever she wanted and I just accept it. I felt sick. Like a part of me shattered that day, knowing the woman I married was capable of lying so easily, so callously. That's when I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay with someone who thought so little of me, who could betray me so thoroughly. I had to figure out what's next. The days that followed were a blur. I spent hours just staring at the wall, trying to process what I'd learned. I kept going over everything in my mind. The way she lied, the way she looked at me with contempt, like I was some fool who didn't see what was right in front of his face. I felt humiliated, angry, and honestly pretty broken. I thought I knew her, thought I knew us. Turns out I was living with a woman who had no problem cheating, lying, and dismissing my feelings like they were nothing. I knew I couldn't stay passive, though. I had to do something. I couldn't just let her walk all over me, especially not after she'd so blatantly betrayed me. So I started planning my revenge. Not in some petty, childish way, but in a way that would make her understand exactly how much she'd screwed up. I wasn't just going to kick her out and call it a day. I wanted her to see what she lost, to feel the pain she'd given me. First, I started by gathering all the evidence. I made copies of the hotel receipts, saved the texts, took screenshots of her social media messages with Jake. I wanted everything in one place. I also quietly reached out to some of her friends, people she's close to, just to see if they knew anything or if she'd been bragging about her little affair. To my surprise, some of them knew, or at least suspected, but nobody said anything to me directly. I guess they all thought she was untouchable, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. Either way, I had enough to make her realize she wasn't hiding this as well as she thought. I decided my approach had to be calculated. I didn't want her to think I was just angry, although I was. I wanted her to understand that I was serious about ending this, that I had proof and was prepared to use it if necessary. So I set up cameras around the house. Nothing obvious, just small devices that would record her coming and going, her interactions with Jake if he ever came back, or anyone else she might invite over. I knew she'd try to sneak around, so I covered my bases. My plan was simple: confront her again, but this time with undeniable proof. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I wasn't just going to roll over and accept her bullshit anymore. I also wanted her to understand she'd lost someone who genuinely loved her, someone who had been blind but wasn't anymore. And I knew, at some point, she'd have to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, I kept my emotions in check as much as I could. Inside, I was raging, but I knew I had to stay calm. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me, at least not yet. I had to play this smart. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't going to let her see me fall apart. Instead, I was going to show her that I had the power now, power to leave, to take everything she cared about away from her if it came to that. One night, I finally decided it was time. I told her I wanted to talk, that I had some things I needed to say. She rolled her eyes and tried to brush me off, acting like I was just some jealous husband throwing a tantrum. But I pulled out my phone and showed her the evidence again, this time with a calm but firm voice. I told her she'd crossed a line, that I knew everything, and that I was done with her manipulations. Her face twisted with anger, but I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew I wasn't playing anymore. I told her I wanted her gone by the end of the week, that I wasn't going to share my life with a woman who thought she could cheat and lie and get away with it. That was the turning point. She didn't argue much after that, just kept throwing her snide remarks and trying to insult me, but I wasn't having it. I told her she could pack her shit and leave, and I'd start the process of rebuilding my life. Honestly, it felt like a small victory, even if I was still raw and hurt inside. I knew I had the evidence, I knew I had the upper hand now, and that was enough to give me some sense of control over this chaos. I didn't know what the future held at that point, but I knew one thing for sure: she wasn't getting away with this. Not without consequences. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Lisa was furious, of course, throwing every insult and dismissive comment she could muster. She called me insecure, obsessive, jealous, anything to deflect from the reality that she'd been caught. But I didn't care about her excuses anymore. All I could think about was how deeply she'd betrayed me, the trust I'd given her that she just threw away with Jake and her lies. I spent most of my time setting things up, calling a lawyer, figuring out what my rights were, and making sure I had a solid plan to leave her. I also made sure to keep the cameras rolling, just in case she tried to do something stupid or sneaky again. I was determined that she wouldn't get the last word, that she wouldn't walk away thinking she'd won. I wanted her to realize she had truly screwed up and that her actions had consequences. One evening, she stormed into the house, fuming, trying to act like she was still in control. I was sitting on the couch, calm but firm, my phone in hand with all the evidence ready. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, but I didn't flinch. I told her, "You've got 30 minutes to pack your stuff and get out. I've had enough of your lies. You've been caught, Lisa. You can either leave peacefully or I'll have the police come and do it for me." Her eyes went wide for a moment. She tried to argue, to act like I was overreacting, but I didn't care. I knew I had the law, the evidence, and the upper hand. She started shouting, calling me crazy, saying I was just jealous, that it's not a big deal, that she loved me. I just looked at her and said, "You've been unfaithful and I don't want to see you or hear from you again. If you try to come back, I'll have you served with a restraining order. This is over." She finally realized I was serious. She snapped her head back, full of rage and contempt, but she knew she was beaten. She grabbed a bag, threw some clothes in it, and stormed out without another word. I watched her leave, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was over. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by somebody I didn't even recognize anymore. The house felt so quiet after she left. I sat down on the same spot she'd just vacated, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to breathe. I looked at the evidence I'd gathered, screenshots, receipts, her texts, and I realized I had done everything I could. I'd uncovered the truth, confronted her, and made her leave. It was a brutal end, but it was what I needed. I finally felt like I had some control back. I spent the next few days taking stock of myself. I contacted friends, family, people I trusted to get their support. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I was devastated, ashamed, angry. But I also knew I deserved better than a cheating wife who lied and sneered at me. I refused to let her define me or ruin me. I'd rebuild piece by piece. The house was empty now, just me and my thoughts, and I realized that no matter how much she'd hurt me, I was still standing. And honestly, that was the only victory I needed right now. The days after Lisa left were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. The house was unbearably quiet, and every corner reminded me of what I'd lost: her voice, her presence, the life I thought we shared. I kept replaying the betrayal over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of the fact that the woman I married, the woman I trusted completely, had been sneaking around with Jake behind my back. It felt like a punch to the gut every time I remembered how she lied so effortlessly, how she dismissed my feelings as if they meant nothing. But amid the pain, there was a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control how I moved forward. I refused to be a victim to her betrayal. I started focusing on myself, taking care of my mental health, going back to the gym, reconnecting with friends I'd pushed aside during the chaos. I also made a point to get rid of everything that reminded me of her, her clothes, the pictures, the gifts. It was like shedding a layer of the past to make room for a new beginning. One thing I kept doing was reviewing the evidence I'd collected. I needed to be sure I'd done everything possible to protect myself legally and emotionally. I met with a lawyer, got all my ducks in a row, and made plans for what my next steps would be if she ever tried to come back or cause trouble. Honestly, I was prepared for her to try something, whether it was trying to manipulate me or make accusations. But I was also ready to stand my ground. I knew I deserved to be happy, to find someone who truly valued me. A surprising thing happened, though. I started to feel the weight lifting slightly. Every day I got a little stronger, a little more focused. I realized that I'd been living in a kind of fog, thinking I was weak for staying, for trusting her. But I wasn't weak. I just loved her, and that love blinded me for too long. Now that love had turned into something else: anger, disappointment, and finally, a resolve to protect myself. I decided I'd rebuild my life, not for her, but for myself. I also started to think about what I wanted from the future. No more lies, no more betrayal. I wanted honesty, respect, and someone who would genuinely care. I knew it was going to take time to heal, but I felt optimistic, not because I thought everything would go back to normal, but because I knew I had the strength to move on. I'd lost a wife, yes, but I hadn't lost my dignity or my ability to love again. Now I was just focusing on healing. That's what mattered most. It's strange how betrayal can wake you up. I always thought I knew what love was, but now I see it's more about trust, something I thought Lisa still had, but clearly she didn't. Moving forward, I'll never ignore the signs again. I'll be more cautious, more aware. No one deserves to be blindsided like I was. But I also learned that the most important thing is to value yourself, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because that pain is what finally pushes you to do the right thing for yourself. Looking back now, I realize this entire experience has changed me in ways I never expected. I always thought love was about trust, about sharing your life with someone who's supposed to have your back. But betrayal teaches you that love isn't enough, trust is. What keeps it alive? And if that trust is broken, everything else falls apart. Lisa's lies shattered that trust, and honestly, it took me a long time to rebuild what I thought was unbreakable. The hardest part was accepting how completely she lied to me, how she played me like a fool. She acted like she was the victim, like I was the insecure one for questioning her. But the truth was, she was the one who betrayed everything we built together. Still, I had to remind myself that her actions didn't define me. I was the one who ultimately had the strength to walk away, to refuse to be her victim any longer. That realization, painful as it was, made me see how much I'd grown. Now I'm focusing on healing, on getting better, on rediscovering myself outside of her shadow. I've started to date again, cautiously, learning to trust, but more importantly, learning to trust myself. I know I'll be okay. I've learned that heartbreak can teach you resilience, and betrayal can teach you boundaries. It's not about revenge anymore, at least not in the way I used to think. It's about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my happiness. Every day, I remind myself that I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who genuinely cares. I don't want to spend my life chasing after someone who can lie and cheat without remorse. I want real love, something built on trust and truth. And if I've learned anything from all of this, it's that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what truly matters. So, here I am, a guy who thought he had everything, only to realize that the most valuable thing I have is myself. And I'm finally starting to believe that I'll find happiness again, better than I ever thought possible. Life goes on, and so will I trust is something I'll guard fiercely now, because it's the foundation of everything good. And as for Lisa, well, she's out of my life, and honestly, I'm better for it. That's all I've got to say.